Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. Let's discuss the next interesting topic about generative AI and Web3. So my name is Dr. Christina Zhang. I'm the CEO and founder of the Metaverse Institute, and also I'm the vice chairman for the United Nations International Telecommunication Union Working Group on Metaverse. So I'm very delighted to have our distinguished panel of expertise to join us for this interesting discussion. Let me introduce them one by one. Our first speaker is Charlotte Simmons, and she is a remarkable marketer expert, right? And she has done a lot of amazing work throughout her professional life. So tell us some interesting facts about yourself.
Sure, definitely. So I've worked in emerging technology since basically graduated from 12 years ago. So so I graduated from uni, went straight into working for tech startups. I had my own automotive tech startup when I graduated, and then worked internally doing marketing for other tech startups. I worked for an innovation agency over 8 years ago where they were developing artificial intelligence and matching them up with large corporates. And then went freelance during COVID, training teams on marketing. And now I went into the Web3 space for 1.5 years, and I now do a lot of AI training, Web3 training. That's me.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alison Alexander, and she is the CEO and founder of Ethics and Social Policy. She has a very distinguished career, actually working for the government before. Is that right?
Yes.
And how did you jump from government into Web3? So centralization versus decentralization.
A very good pivot, totally. So hello, very lovely to be here, and thank you. Yes, the interesting fact about me is that I pivoted from local government, used to be the CEO of a borough in the country, in the UK, and I went from that into virtual reality as a CEO of a virtual reality company, and then co-founded MetaCampus, which is a Web3 startup based on how do we help the world transition from the Web2 environment into the Web3. And how did I do that? Because I thought I'd had enough of local government and politics. I retired at the grand age of 50, and somebody asked me to be the CEO of their virtual reality company that was using virtual reality to help people learn to empathise with children and vulnerable adults in a whole different way. And because I'd worked in and led children's services, adult services, health services, I was ideally suited to that role. But it was a whole new learning experience for me. So I've been on a learning journey for the last few years.
That's really cool. And you just mentioned that you're actually already over 50 years old. Are you kidding me? You're so young.
I'm actually 55 now. I'm usually the oldest on any panel when we're talking about Web3.
And you still keep on innovating every day, which is amazing. Thank you. Our next speaker is Asavari Moon. I love your surname. I want to name myself Zhang. Maybe that will be very interesting. And she has a very distinguished career in lots of marketing, and you serve very big clients like L'Oreal, Nvidia, Estee Lauder, Uber Eats, Meta, and Google. And you're actually doing lots of really interesting work on how to support female to prosper. So how do you think we can do more in terms of gender equality in the Web3 space?
Absolutely. Maybe I'll start with a little bit of my introduction. I started my career in tech as a software engineer, and then I pivoted into marketing after my MBA. And as you mentioned, since then I've worked with the likes of L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, etc. It was around pandemic when I pivoted back into tech, and I worked with Google and Meta since then. I'm right now founder of Future Female Marketers, which is a platform for innovative marketers to learn all about the newest technology like AR, VR, Gen AI, Web3, and I think that's my way of bringing in more women, not just in tech, but also the new age marketing technologies. As part of Future Female Marketers, we also help brands analyze what their Web3 strategy could be looking like in the more immersive environment, to engage with the consumers. I write weekly newsletters called Digiverse with Noon. That's a newsletter that's often sent on Monday, and that's where, again, talk about all the latest and greatest in the Web3 space, AI space, but also social media space. And I think one tip that I give to any woman who wants to make a career in tech, or even like, in this new age technology, is to not hear the word no. Like every single time someone tells you, no, that's not possible, just realize that it's not possible with them, but there's going to be another way to do it. So get rid of all the imposter syndrome and yeah, ask for help, ask for support. People are there to support you, and that's how you're going to make your mark.
That's wonderful, just like you, making lots of major breakthroughs. And I know you are leading some really interesting campaign at Google now.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, our final speaker is Andrew Keith's worker, and he's producer at We Podcast You. And something really special about Andrew is he's a very successful serial entrepreneur, and he already had 3 successful exits. Is that right?
I wouldn't call them all successful. I've had 3 exits. That's not a cry for help. Yeah, I have, and one of them was very successful. I had a company that eventually sold to Apple, a machine learning company that analysed audience behaviour. And I actually started out with a job that was replaced by digitalisation. I was a copy boy in a Scotsman newspaper with a degree. And someone suggested I go back to uni and get a proper degree. So I went back and did a postgrad MSc in technology, in multimedia technology, that's what they call it then. And yeah, I was thrown off my postgrad MSc because I made games you could play on the internet. And apparently that was a flash in the pan that never catch on. And my tutor challenged me, he said, you'll never get a job doing that. You should be working in CD-ROMs. And I said, I can get a job this afternoon. He said, no, you couldn't. So I said, fuck you, buddy. And I was young, I was foolish. And I stormed out. I actually got a job making computer games that afternoon in Siberia, at Cyber Cafe. And from then, I was always sort of stuck between, I secretly wanted to be a novelist, but I kept working in technology for a long time. Which is a lot of how I got into all of that. It's a long story. Sorry.
That sounds really cool, and you're very modest, like most of my British friends. British sense of humor, being self-deprecating.
Right, well, post-Brexit, we've got nothing left. That's all we got. We've got nothing to feel sorry about, let's face it. We just totally shafted ourselves.
I find it's difficult to follow up on that, but my personal perception is, as entrepreneurs and innovators, we can always start from scratch. So even we have got Brexit, maybe there are other ways we can keep Britain great again. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm sure we can do it, because life is so short. We need to make positive impact.
You should put those initials on a cap. That could really sell.
Maybe we should start the experiment later today. Wonderful. Let's go through all the serious questions. So my first question to our panel is, how can Web3 technology and generative AI work together to enhance user experience? Charlotte, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've been here all day and I've listened to all of the really interesting panels, and you can see that there's a running theme where AI is so good for personalization, creativity, and bringing that uniqueness, and matching that with Web3 tech. So we're talking about metaverse, DAOs, where the individualization and decentralization, all of that coming together has to go hand in hand, and the real community aspect and building, fans if you're a musician or an artist, and that fan base, and the two go hand in hand for sure.
That's wonderful. So Alison, you are in the education field, so I guess community building must be quite important for you.
Definitely, and I think building on what's been said, and I think the last 2 panels also talked about it, around the use of the Web3 tools to really enhance how AI is helping us all evolve and grow as individuals in society. So I think that's really important. But I think for me, I just want to jump on a little bit more about how they can, because I think for me, using the Web3 tools of the blockchain, we can really, really help AI and for humans to really feel that they can trust AI in a whole different way. The blockchain is based on a technology that makes data held on it immutable, and therefore if AI developers are using blockchain to store data on how AI, where it's getting its data. We just heard the questions, where does it get its data? How is that data being used? Therefore, it will become more transparent. So I think we need to be looking at the tools of Web3 of the blockchain to really help that. I think we could also be looking at setting up the decentralized marketplaces that we're seeing. Actually, everybody wants more data. And actually, AI companies should be going to decentralized marketplaces, and we should be able to sell our data, which is totally in line with the principles of Web3. And therefore, I can make money from my data being used by the AI companies, but I can also track to see what it's being used for. So two really important things that I think we can do, which then also offers security to people.
But also having the opportunity to give away the data that you want to give away and keep back from one.
And just more importantly, to earn from it. How many people in the room have wanting to look at how they earn from it? So have a decentralized marketplace where I can go to it, I can tokenize my digital data, I can give that to others, and I can earn from that, rather than centralized bodies earning from that.
That sounds like a really good business model. Asavari, I think you want to comment on that as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to put my marketer's hat and answer that. I feel like just with Gen AI, there's so much that brands can do to enhance the consumer experience. As simple as adding a chatbot to answer frequently asked questions, I think can enhance that experience anyway. But I'm also going to talk about audience and targeting. And I think somebody just asked a question in the previous panel around targeting Gen Alpha and Gen Z. And these are the audiences that major brands are looking after, but the best way to reach them is going to be in the spaces where they are at, which could be Roblox, which has so many million users every single day. And with AI and Web3 technologies, you are able to then give them the curated experiences, also engage them outside of the limitations of geographical boundaries or physical limitations. So I think that gives you that advantage to, engage with them in that virtual reality. Third thing I'll also say is content creation. For anything that we need to do on Metaverse, like even building a small virtual experience like a stadium or a place takes almost like 6 to 8 weeks to build it, also requires an investment of 6 figures. And you also need developers with very enhanced skills. But with Gen AI and advancement in that, it has become so much easier and faster to market. In my mind, I almost call it the WordPress moment or the YouTube moment for Metaverse and for the new age technologies, where the advancement of all these technologies with Gen AI is going to be making all these tools faster to market, easier to access.
That's wonderful.
I think accessibility is the key thing on both sides of that equation, because imagine a chatbot that actually can answer your questions and doesn't make you really angry and then phone up customer services. Because it feels like chatbots are just there mostly to piss you off and make you ring a number. So, and then when you ring the number, obviously you've got to press buttons, you've got to wait, you've got to know, you've got to understand so much about the process. And I think it's easy to laugh about it, but actually it's not an accessible process for people, for vulnerable adults, people with cognitive difficulties, people who don't speak English as a first language. That can be very challenging. So on that side, the ability for a large language model to understand intents and actually respond appropriately is huge for usability. But then the flip side is actually when you're designing services and products, being able to, often the problem is you've got way too much data. Companies have this dark data problem, and 80% of all the stuff they've collected never really gets used. And just doing little things like get a chatbot, you can train chatbots, feed every invoice and every proposal you've ever given to a client into a chatbot with ChatSonic that has a tool called BotSonic. And then you've got a chatbot that you can say, okay, when did I send the invoice for this? And it'll tell you. And so then when you're writing them to chase them for money, you've actually got a little friend who's there to help you. And the idea you could use that actually by taking user data, usability data, customer workshops, that kind of thing, and actually process that information in real time so your design teams can say, hold on a second, do people like pink or black? Let's have a look. Oh, the computer says, oh, it's pink. Then you're saving a lot of time on the dev side as well. So there's advantages, I think, usability-wise, both within the process and then also externally.
That's interesting. So do we see any challenges we also need to manage when using Web3 and generative AI together to provide better usability?
Can I dive in on that one? Because I know everyone else has got something better to say than I'm saying yeah, because, you know, with my background, it took me so long to plug Coinbase wallets into my browser that I'm happy to admit it, but I was fairly ashamed. It's arcane trying to understand what is going on with your Web3 wallet. So it's not an accessible product. The FCA has passed regulations now that we have to create financial products that are suitable for vulnerable adults, but there's no way in the world a vulnerable adult is going to be able to, you know, download whatever it is. This one with a fox on it, MetaMask, that's it. Download MetaMask and, you know, hook it up with your whatever and move some Ethereum into it and do this and do that. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. Do you take money, young man? I mean, it's upstairs. The lady doesn't take cash upstairs. I had to touch my phone to her phone. You know, wow, back in the day that meant we were married. So, you know what I mean? So I'm going to say right now, and the thing is, this is coming. There's 114 experiments in Jamaica. They've just launched their own digital currency, the Jam DAX, I believe, Jam DAX. Obviously, China was the first one with the digital yuan. There are 14 digital currencies in use right now around the world. And the digital euro is just over the horizon. Products, CEDA, the Fed, is coming. Everyone's going to be issued with a wallet and have digital money and not understand what they're going to do with it. So there's a massive problem coming.
I was going to say, so that is one of the points that you asked earlier around the education. And we heard that on the wonderful last panel, and I think Mark talked about it as well. The absolute necessity at a governmental level for us to look at what our education is about. Where is the future going, and how do we create a curriculum, and I mean a curriculum for FL reception, all the way up to A-level, all the way through to degree, and then also for ongoing learning when you're in professional development, when you're in employment. But I think that we need to charge the government with a responsibility on our behalf as citizens to design an education system that is fit for purpose for the next 50 years. Yes, we will always want to teach citizens about history, because that's the bit that also is important. But we should be talking about teaching the history using the tools of the future. So the metaverse, for instance, that people will have various different views around. Take young people that are not engaged academically, put them in an environment where in a metaverse environment, and allow them to learn differently. We have so many people with different needs, and we need to be looking at all the different tools that are available to us. So we need to look at it at a governmental level. We need to also be picking up the issue then of parents. Parents are the ones who are actually will be scared of the technology, because it isn't easy to set up a MetaMask. It isn't easy to go on Twitter. It's really scary going in Twitter Spaces, all of that stuff. And therefore we need to help them. And we need to be not saying this isn't going to happen. I mean, Mark talked about 2028 and what the world will be looking like. I mean, 2030, the metaverse will be $1 trillion industry. Everyone here will be looking at how do I gear my business to be ready for this. So therefore, we need to equip the citizens of the future for this. And we need to do it in schools. We need to give wallets to children. We need to educate them, because that allows us to address the issue of ethics as well, because then we enable people to have a greater understanding. All of us grew up and we were told, don't do various things, and we all did them, and we did them in unsafe ways. Let's not make sure our children are told, don't play with AI, don't play with Web3, and therefore they do it in the bedroom, in the dark space on their own. And they don't want to tell a parent when something has gone wrong because they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing.
Can I just jump in on that? So 2 points. So firstly, education, definitely important. From a parent's perspective, I have 2 girls, 1 5, 1 2-year-old, and I'm already teaching my 5-year-old how to use ChatGPT and Midjourney through me. So putting her imagination like into these tools, coming up with stories that she can then print off and take into school, images from her mind. So I think it is important as parents to be educating ourselves and then educate our kids. And also with companies actually building technology. Like I've worked on a few different accelerators, Web3 accelerators, who are building tech where it has that like intermediary, so you're not necessarily using wallets or having crypto, like it does the transition internally, so you're not actually seeing what's going on behind, because people don't care about the tech, like they want a good user experience. So I think a big part of it is companies utilising the startup technology that is being created to actually have that transition, so that people aren't scared of the tech if they're not actually seeing it.
I really like the point by you both. I wonder, should we also looking at how to educate the regulators, because if they can get the very best of how the innovation, say Web3 or generative AI is going to develop in the years to come, we're all going to get into trouble. So that's one point. And another question I wonder if some of the panel speakers can answer is, how can we ensure the aging society, say our own parents, our grandparents, when they are facing with like the rising prevalence of generative AI or Web3, how can they learn to really benefit from that? Because I know my mom will really struggle when sometimes I try to teach her how to use online banking. She just can't get it. And I thought that's really easy. But if it's like generative AI or Web3, how can we ensure the people who give us life, allow us to exist in the first place, will also be supported? Andrew, what do you think?
I think voice has been massively underplayed in that area. Nothing is easier to use than voice. Nothing is more frustrating as well. I'm sure everybody here has had an argument, sworn at their Alexa at some point, or if you have a Google Home, I bet you wish you bought an Alexa. No, I'm joking. I really am joking. But no, I mean, the thing is that voice is very accessible. If you think about it, my step-mother-in-law, it's a long story. Another one. Sorry.
We're happy to listen.
My stepmother-in-law cannot do anything on a screen. It's painful to see her grab a mouse and then sort of like do this with it. And it's not working. She couldn't use Spotify to save her life. She was never going to sign up for an account or anything. She's got a Spotify account and she says, Alexa. Alexa. Yes. Play. And sadly, it's often play Gary Glitter. She's that generation. And Alexa doesn't respond. She'll often go say, be man for his man, or something like that. Moody Blues. Anyone? No? Play Jeff Wayne's War of the World. And the thing is, what she's actually doing, she's interacting with the stream, she's creating preferences and playlists and doing all that stuff, but to her she's just having a conversation, which is the most natural thing in the world. So I think voice has a massive role to play. And also generative AI, if we're talking about it from an interactive point of view, it's all about natural language. So I think voice has been overlooked because Alexa doesn't have a large language model, really. It's got a pretty small language model, but it's growing and it's changing, it's developing. So I think voice is going to be the key.
Interesting. Asavari, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm going to hint back to your previous question as well in terms of regulation. And I feel like the question should be not whether we need it or not. It's the question when and how. I feel like, just like any other technology, there is a big hype and then everyone's on board and then it kind of settles down as well. But I also feel that when social media came up, nobody knew the advantages, the disadvantages of the way to regulate it or what we could use it for potentially, interacting with people. I think the same is going to happen with AI. If we restrict it too early, we might not be able to know the potential of what it could really help us solve. And if we do it too late, then there's an issue of being misused. So I think to the core, it's like not to be fearful of this technology. I think it's all about balancing the education, as you said. And it's also a matter of working very closely with the councils and the regulators to ensure that there's a way to monitor the progress of it. And I also agree with you, voice I feel is so underrated. And similar story with my parents as well. Sometimes it's so much easier for them to send me a voice note rather than typing the whole text. And even when they're typing, I can see them type one letter and then I'm still waiting another second later. So yeah, I think involving that LLM would really help us accelerate that and make it more accessible to aged population as well.
I was going to say, that also does come back to, doesn't it, the more that we talk about it positively. When we have a negative slant, and we do have to look around and say there's generally, even though this is an AI summit, there is generally outside a negative slant as to what's happening with AI at the moment. And therefore, the minute we do that, then people are less willing to raise these issues. We're less willing to invest in different ways of doing it. And that's why it's really important on all of us to turn that around so that our children are talking about it positively and they are doing it in a safe way. Yep. And our employers are talking about it positively and how we're going to change things. Because the more that we are all doing that, then when we talk to our parents, then actually we talk about it in a positive way and we help them find those transitions into using it in a different way.
This also brings it back, just to Web3 tech and blockchain and privacy and data and transparency. And actually, when we come back to this panel, the bottom line is that Web3 can help with the fake news and the deep fakes that people are seeing and getting scared of. If it was underlined with the blockchain technology, then that would eliminate a lot of those problems.
Wonderful. I'm going to be very controversial because Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, as you know, and the godfather of AI, had a very sensational resignation from Google. And he quoted one of the 3 reasons why he resigned. One is about massive population of fake news is going to be everywhere. Another one is about mass unemployment issue caused by AI. And the third one, which are quite serious, is basically they are worried the population of AI can exceed the intelligence of human. So I wonder, from a Web3 perspective, is there any particular feature of the Web3 can help us to address any of the challenges posed by the fast rising intelligence of AI? Any panel want to start? I know it's challenging, sorry.
I don't mind starting with that.
Okay,
just
sure.
Around community. So I think a big part of Web3 is the community and the philosophies and the mindset as well. So it's not necessarily the tech, but actually keeping what has been a running theme today around the human element is so important. So I think that is key in that.
Wonderful. Alison.
I was going to come back to the blockchain as a real way to help reduce the fake news and to element that. I think employment changes all the time, doesn't it? I mean, when we've had industrial revolutions, we have all said we're all going to lose our jobs. Actually, there is going to be a need for us to work differently. And therefore, that's why we do have to make sure we're all educated on this, so that we have employment opportunities. So that's, in a sense, that's a bit like the fake news, to be honest, and people who have taken a lot of money to build a lot of AI who are now sensationalizing, resigning and making these statements. I mean, we have to also be really looking at that as well.
I agree. I don't mind AI taking over the jobs to do with cooking every day. I'll be very
I'm going to build on that. I keep saying this. It's not that AI is going to take your job. It's the person who knows how to use AI that's going to take your job. Yeah. And to your point, I think with technology, with the Industrial Revolution as well, it took away certain types of jobs, but it did create new ones. And I feel that even with now AI, there's so much that's been new roles that are created, like prompt engineering, for example, or conversational AI right now with Sunrise. So I feel that, it'll take a little bit of time for everyone to get used to understand how this technology works, how they can upskill themselves, and then the balance will come.
Thank you so much. So I think we now have to pass over to audience questions, maybe 2 or 3 audience questions.
Yeah, sure. I'm Tim Noakes from Synthesia. The public perception of Web3 is that it's dead in the water. mainly because of Bitcoin crashes, no trust in FTX, etc. And what Charlotte and Andrew said, one of the things I find interesting, why it didn't take off beyond those things about, sort of Ponzi schemes, etc., is the barrier to entry. And I'd love to hear the panel's opinion, or if there's any case studies of Gen AI being used to actually help ease the barrier to entry for these amazing technologies like the blockchain to make things better. So to kind of resuscitate Web3 almost.
Can I just clarify something on that for a second? If you're talking about tokenization, NFTs, blockchain, that kind of stuff, it is far from dead. It is a multi-million-dollar industry. The largest.
Totally, but the public perception, if you compare what people are talking about in Web3 from this time to 12 months ago, no one's talking about it, right? So in terms of but in terms of the wider, the bigger discussion, metaverse, etc., no one is really talking about it. Everyone's talking about Gen.
But to be clear though, there are, quite literally, the infrastructure that runs global finance is investing billions in tokenization right now. So you look at Clearstream Bank, you look at JP Morgan, you look at Citibank, BNP Paribas, etc. They've just done their first, I think, £30 million test transfer with a company called HQLAX, where they transferred assets, bonds against cash settlement between here and Australia to do a little test and back again. And they're now looking at tokenization of plumbing for cross-border settlement across the entirety of the world, Europe, the Fed, etc. It is the technology of banking. So although NFTs, and that sort of public face have gone down, the thing is, public blockchains play a fundamental role because they're the only way that you can connect these individual platforms together, which is why the 114 central banks around the world that are experimenting with digital currency, about 80% of them are using ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum network, because they need to be able to plug in their system to someone else's system. So actually, it's huge, and it's doing very well. My Bitcoin are doing fine, because when I bought them, they cost about 800 quid. So from my point of view, there's been no Bitcoin
He's buying
cash.
drinks. He's buying the drinks,
It's worked out well. But the bigger point is that public blockchain infrastructure is very important for democracy, that we have public networks to facilitate the regulation of private entities so we don't go back into a crash scenario. And digital money is essential because we've got to get rid of it. It's got way too much money in the system right now. It's having a massive impact on the economy, as we can see. So I think public perception is very warped, bearing in mind that most people in here will at some point today have transacted through a system that's connected to a blockchain, even if they don't realise it, just by touching their phone to someone else's and getting married.
But coming back to the question, can I just say to the question you asked about how they can as well, because all of that I think absolutely well said. I mean, and I'm going to use the classic like ChatGPT. Yeah. Now, when people say, how can the technology help? You plumb the question in of how do I set up my MetaVerse, and the instructions are so explicit and so clear that people can follow. So the ability to give everyone access to this has meant that in some ways people don't need to go to as many classes because they can self-teach themselves from that. So just that in itself is a really significant tool as to help people to do this.
I see there's
just following up on what you said, first of all, I appreciate the information you gave us. You said, like, we're fortunate enough to have the technology and resources in this country to get all the information to transit from Web 2 to Web 3. But what about the people in third world countries that don't have these type of resources and technologies to get all this information?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, one of the things that I would say is that across the globe, that people do have mobile infrastructure. So I know that not everyone, of course, and in developing worlds, there are different levels of that. But actually, this technology, especially Web3 technology, is being adopted at a governmental level in some of the developing countries more than in developed countries. And I think that there are more people saying now that actually the developed countries could be leapfrogged in some ways, because actually not only are they educating their children about it, the infrastructure of the countries are dependent on it, whether it's because of their economy doesn't stand up, so therefore they're then engaging in digital currency. So actually I think, yes, we have to collectively ensure the equity is addressed, those issues, but I believe that some of the developing countries are taking hold of this technology much faster than developed countries and allowing their citizens to progress. And I think it's going to look very differently in 20, 30 years.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more, and then we're going to pass on. Okay.
I think there is a gentleman at the back.
Hi, I'm Dan, head of data in a print-on-demand company, born originally in a developing country, right? And I moved to UK. And obviously, when you compare the two, you kind of see the rule of law as important, right? And that's what kind of differentiates the trajectory of the country. So I'm just curious, just building on the topics and the questions. When it comes to Web3 and blockchain, do you see that playing a role in sort of equal distribution of income and sort of these smart contracts, etc.? Is that what you're alluding to? Kind of that in 20 to 30 years, we'll have, if there is a leader who is willing to press